So having discussed three types of rituals, I'd like to move on for some time to ideological rituals, of which there are many different kinds for different purposes. So the next two sections will be devoted to ideological rituals, the first of which will talk about rites of passage, rites of intensification, and rites of rebellion. Ideological rituals in general control the mood, behavior, sentiments, and values of the group for the sake of the community. Essentially, they're designed to do what Durkheim had talked about in bringing communities together and enacting core values that the community shares. Ideological rituals are designed to help people gain a sense of solidarity with other people, to feel a sense of commitment to community values and ethics, and to enact the core elements of their culture through religious means. Examples of ideological rituals include rites of passage, which mark transition points in a person's life, rites of intensification, which ensure that people adhere to values and customs core to the community, rites of rebellion, which contribute to order and stability through venting frustrations, so it gives people an organized time and place to express their frustration and their dislike of these community norms and customs, which allow those customs to continue so that they're not as threatened by people sort of blowing up at having to conform to the group. And then taboos and courtesies, which are things to do or not to do. So in this particular section, we'll be talking about the first three of these, and in the next section, we'll be talking about taboos. So a rite of passage marks transformations in the life cycle of an individual. And these are rituals that move us from one position in society to another. These include births, rituals at puberty, things like bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs, quinceañeras, and so on, marriage, and death, funerals, which move us to a social position of being a living, contributing member of society to one who has passed on, and in some religious systems is part of the ancestral realm at that point. And finally, rites of passage also relate to initiations into special roles or groups. So graduation initiates you into those who have passed all of their studies and become alumni. The initiation of a priest, the ordination of a priest, is an initiation that moves that person from a secular role, a layperson role in a religion, to a specialist role in the religion. The inauguration of a president moves that person from not being president into a presidency. So here we see a variety of examples and pictures representing rites of passage. At the top, we have the circumcision rite for male Jewish infants. You see here the men wearing prayer shawls and yarmulkes. You see in the second photo Malawi boys at a puberty rite. We'll talk in a moment why they're wearing these funny masks and outfits. And then you have a Sardinian wedding. This is probably recognizable to most of you. And then finally at the bottom, a Catholic funeral. So rites of passage happen in three stages. This is something that von Gennep came up with in discussing the rites of passage and how they function. And this basically includes a stage of separation, one of liminality, and then one of reaggregation. So when you go through a rite of passage, what happens is first you're separated from, in some way, from the rest of society. This breaks you from your former social role. Then you go into a period where you're betwixt and between. That is, you're not quite in one position, and yet you're not quite in another social role yet either. And then finally you go through some sort of ritual that puts you back together again in society, but in your new role. So during the period of separation, initiates, those who are about to go through the ritual, are temporarily separated from the rest of society. Sometimes this is physically that they're separated. They live in a special separate housing, for example, from their families. Sometimes it's through clothing, as we saw with the Malawi boys' puberty rite. They're marked through having these sort of strange clothes. Sometimes it's through other markings. And then you go into a liminal period. The liminal period is where the initiates undergo testing and instruction to prepare them for their new life phase. It moves them from one role to the other. And this liminal period is characterized by communitas. Communitas is a feeling, an intense feeling of community and solidarity among participants. For example, when you think about boot camp for the military, these folks that are entering the military are separated from their families. They're all taken to the same place to go to boot camp. They're not yet fully in the military. They're in training. And they develop through sort of being tested together, an intense feeling of brother and sisterhood in this. So this is the value of the liminal period, is it not only marks that transition point and instructs the participant in how to move from one social role to another, but it also gives them a sense of loyalty, solidarity with others who are going through the same circumstance or have already done so. Then finally, when this period is over, the initiates are reintegrated into society in their new status. Oftentimes, again, reintegrated physically, you know, returning to family homes and things like that, and also being reintegrated through their clothing or other markings on their body that signifies that they've moved from one stage to another. The photo here is of my work with the Druids. Here you have the central altar in the center, and what you'll notice is a number of the people are wearing green. And these green tabards are signs of having reached and begun the second degree. So what happens is between degrees, there's 3 degrees, and people have to be passed on by a mentor. You have to complete a long paper at the very end of your studies of a degree and apply for moving to the next degree, and this is approved or denied by your tutor, your mentor. So when you go through the first degree, the color you wear is blue, and when you are finished with the first degree grade, which is called the Bardic grade, you have a time period where you've finished all of your instruction and coursework, but you have to write this paper, and then you have to mail the paper off to your mentor and wait to hear if you've been approved or denied to move on to the next grade. So there's this liminal period where you are kind of finished with the first degree, but you're not quite part of the second degree yet either. Then you receive the okay on that, and you're sent the materials for the initiation of the ritual into the second degree, if you don't have a group in your area that does group rituals for that rite of passage. And it's at that point that you can sort of pick up and start wearing the color of the second degree, the green. So when you reintegrate back into ritual with community, you're signifying that you've moved on to then that next social role, the role of the ovate in this case. Okay, another type of ideological ritual are rites of intensification. Rites of intensification can be calendrical, which means they're cyclical, or for times of crisis. Cyclical rituals happen year after year at roughly the same time. So if we think about, you know, Yom Kippur or Hanukkah in the Jewish calendar, this happens every year. Christmas in the Christian calendar, Ramadan in the Muslim calendar, and so on. These are rites of intensification that are calendrical or happen regularly. They can also happen in times of crisis. So we frequently see in the United States that when a national crisis occurs, for example, what happened at 9/11, many different religions will have prayer services or special meditation services, some kind of special service to deal with that crisis religiously. So these cyclical ritual years, these holidays that happen over and over again in religions, are designed to move participants through a series of experiences that affirm their common values and customs, whereas the rites of intensification for times of crisis are designed to deal with feelings of anxiety and giving comfort to people. The picture here on the right is this calendrical ritual cycle common to Wiccans, Druids, and other neo-pagans, which they call the wheel of the year, or the turning of the wheel. And this guides each person through 2 rituals per season that allow the person to connect through psychological work, through the psyche, to what is going on in the seasons out in nature. So the neo-pagan calendar begins with Samhain. Here up at the top you can see this with the skull and the jack-o'-lantern. Of course, this is at the same time as Halloween. Samhain is considered the new year for many pagans. It's when you celebrate the lives of those who have been lost, the lives of those who have passed on, very much like Day of the Dead. It's also when you grieve for them and remember them. It's also when you reflect on the previous year and do rituals that let go of any baggage that you might have had. Then you move into Yule. Yule is right at the winter solstice. It's right before Christmas. And it's designed to celebrate the coming of the longer days, the coming of the light. Yule is the darkest day of the year, the least amount of sunlight. And in the European areas where a lot of these traditions arose, this is particularly marked because in the winter, especially in the far northern regions like the United Kingdom and Scandinavia, the winter days were very, very short. And the nights were very long and dark. So you're celebrating at this point the coming of those longer days. You move into Imbolc. Nature is beginning to stir and flower. There's the very first early bulb-based flowers that flower in Northern Europe. And this is precisely what you do in your own psyche as well. People in Imbolc rituals tend to focus on healing any wounds that remain and dreaming for the coming year. Then you move into spring equinox. Spring equinox rituals tend to focus, just as spring really gets going, they tend to focus on planting your dreams in your psyche. So frequently rituals will involve planting seeds, for example, while also naming the things you hope to bring to fruition in the year. At Beltane, May 1st, this is the second spring ritual. That ritual focuses on this is the first summer ritual, pardon me. The Beltane ritual on May 1st focuses on the fertility of everything, bringing the crops, the animals, to full fertility and fruitfulness. Then you have Midsummer, which is the summer solstice, which again is even more of a waxing toward the harvest. Lughnasadh, which is August 1st, is the first harvest. And then you have Autumn Equinox, which is the second harvest. And at Lughnasadh, typically there's a celebration of community. At Autumn Equinox, there's normally more of a sense of balancing one's life and reflecting on the prior year and celebrating personal harvests and growth. So you can see how what happens with this calendar year is that it's moving these participants through a series of experiences that connect them to nature and affirm values that they hold in common. That is, the values that nature is sacred, the values that we should be taking charge of our own lives and moving ourselves through these different stages of dreaming, planning, planting, harvesting, and then grieving what we've lost. The same thing you'll find in any calendrical cycle. So the Christian cycle of moving through a, a period of Lent before Easter, where you might fast or give up other things precious to oneself, celebrating at Easter the death and resurrection as it's told in the sacred stories, the myth of the Bible, in the Gospels of Jesus. Coming into Christmas later on in the year being a time that celebrates the coming of better times. You find in every religion a calendrical cycle that moves people through common shared experiences in this way, that recommits them to values. Now, it's worth mentioning also that these rites of intensification are also what we would call weekly or monthly services. So, you know, whether someone is going to Friday prayers at a mosque, or they're going to, you know, the Sabbath as Jewish people at a synagogue, or they are going to church on a Sunday, all of these are also examples of rites of intensification. Rather than being part of the calendrical year, they're part of a shorter cycle. So it's fairly common that you find modern world religions having some sort of weekly or bi-weekly services, as well as these larger holidays, which, you know, if you look at the word holiday, it's really holy day, these days that are set apart as particularly special. Finally, we're going to talk about rites of rebellion. So some rituals involve symbolic inversion. What symbolic inversion is a temporary reversal of everyday social behavior and order. So, you know, this is the time for people to do things that are a little bit crazy. And it's done in a structured performance. Rather than having it actually lead to social change, it usually is a way for people to sort of vent frustrations with ordinary boundaries of behavior. So these rites of reversal and rebellion actually serve to maintain social order. They allow people to sort of vent feelings of wanting to do something different other than the social norms, but they also, in so doing, point out the boundaries of what acceptable behavior normally is. So this actually ultimately strengthens the group by both providing sort of a vent for people's psychological steam, and also for pointing out that, okay, you behave this way right now, but you're not allowed to do this tomorrow, or when this time period is over, when this ritual is over. Very popular rites of rebellion that we know of in the United States involve Halloween, where children and many adults, here in the top photo, dress up in costumes and sort of run around and knocking on random people's doors and being given candy. And also Mardi Gras. Everybody knows about Mardi Gras in New Orleans. And Mardi Gras is a time where people can sort of, you know, enact all sorts of things that are normally not acceptable social behavior. You know, wearing skimpy clothing and behaving in a crazy manner and drinking in the streets in public and all sorts of raucous behavior, sort of, you know, being like this to excess, one big party, and sort of getting it out of people's systems so that then they can go back to ordinary social behavior afterward. So rites of rebellion really work hand in hand with rites of intensification. The rites of intensification providing a consistent way for people to recommit to the community's values and to enact these values and ethics and be moved through feeling this sense of solidarity to their community through these common values. And the rites of rebellion giving the opportunity, usually every year, for people to sort of vent their angst at having these social norms and not being able to do whatever they want. So the two kind of work hand in hand to strengthen the group's sense of solidarity and the social order so that people behave in predictable ways.